So this is the Thursday night class where I just make things up as I go along. It's intentional that way, with kind of an idea that I'm just gonna let myself sort of be intuitively guided and then take you along on the journey. So I like to have a bunch of props around me when I get started, so just in case, because I don't know what I'm gonna wanna use. So I've got a strap, I've got a couple of yoga blocks, a blanket, and a pillow. And if you have any of those items, grab whatever you think you might like to have, just in case. Just put them nearby. They don't have to be on your mat, but close by. So I'm gonna start with a little seated meditation tonight. So I'm gonna use my blanket as a little cushion or as a place to sit. So I've just folded it up so it's nice and comfy. And then usually it's best for me if whatever I'm sitting on, whether it's a pillow or a blanket, is to kind of slide to the edge so that just my sit bones are on it and the thighs are really off. And that lifts my hips up a little higher. It lets my knees drop down a little lower, and it's a more comfortable position to sit in. And then I don't have to use my core muscles as much to hold my spine in place. I can mostly just hang out here. So that's the option, or that's the object, is to find a comfortable enough position that you're able to settle in without without really trying to grip to hold yourself up. Sort of like slipping into the hot tub. If you approach your meditation too stiffly, too rigidly, whether mentally or physically, generally I think it's harder to, just a little bit. It's like a fight. Whereas really, what meditation is just trying to be present for the moment that you're in. So if we're gripping in that moment, then there's always this kind of innervation to our nervous system. So we want the nervous system to relax so that we can be present. So the best thing to do physically is to get in a state where you can mostly relax. Now, if you do the palms up, I find this is a little bit easier if you feel kind of sleepy, because it keeps you a little more awake. And you can do a mudra with your hands. That'll give your brain something to pay attention to, and it might make a difference. Again, my preference is to be the least amount of intensity possible. I want to be the most relaxed I can get. Sometimes this works for me. Usually I use mudras a little differently. So you could also turn your palms down, right? So you could do the index finger and the thumb together represent sort of focusing, right? So that mudra is thought to kind of focus the mind. So if that's helpful, then that's good. The middle finger is the finger of patience. So if you put your middle finger together with your thumb, it's thought to engender a little bit more patience. The ring finger and the thumb is thought to bring some healing. And there's two different ways to approach that. You can put the tip of the finger and the thumb together, or you can take your thumb to the base of the finger. And that kind of pressure point is an acupuncture point, thought to kind of generate healing, which I think is interesting. You check it out and see what you think. And then you can also bring your pinky finger to your thumb if what you're working on is kind of tuning into your intuition. So those kind of basic mudras are kind of fun to play with a little bit while you're meditating. And you can do the palms up or the palms down, depending on how it feels to you with any of those fingers. Just placing the hands on the thighs is called the mudra of calm abiding, and that's my favorite one for this purpose. Or you can cup one hand inside the other, resting the thumbs together. And that is another mudra, I can't remember the name of it, but it's thought to sort of engender a peacefulness, right? So you can bring yourself to that mudra, whichever one you think is the right one. And then take a few moments and just relax. So if it feels like you're sort of gripping or holding on around the eyes or around your mouth, let that soften. I'm going to soften my hair, because now that I've done that, I can feel the pull. And then allow yourself to just get steady. So we're going to try to engender a sense of peacefulness and calmness and a sense of contentment. And we're going to do that in a very particular way. first start by just becoming aware of the breath. You might notice the breath like right at the tips of the nostrils, or you might notice the breath at the kind of movement of the chest or the belly. You might notice that kind of sense in the deep low belly of the breath kind of dropping in on the inhale and lightening you up on the exhale. So just notice the breath in some fashion. Now we're going to take a moment and just experience a sense of gratitude. You may have to work a little bit at this depending on how your day has gone. So trying to create a sense for yourself of being deeply grateful for this next breath as it comes in. And as it goes out. As you're kind of riding this little wave of the breath, can you find yourself in a state where you're just almost in a state of wonder? You're so deeply grateful that the breath keeps coming, that it's here right now. We have this moment where we get to experience life. Use that kind of a sense of being really deeply grateful to try to kind of flavor our whole practice tonight. So you might start with just moving your spine around through these little seated cat cobra shapes, just rocking it back and rocking it forward. And if there's little places along the way, like maybe there's a little sticky spot in your back, and normally you would have little judgment about that sticky spot. Instead, can you just be grateful that it's there for you to feel and notice it, and just say thanks to it for bringing itself to your attention so that you know that that's a spot that needs extra love. Now I'm going to take, as I come up tall, I'm just going to add this little washing machine movement to my body. And I like the arms just going to go along for the ride and just turn. It's super light, not too intense. Just a little seated twist. Now whatever leg is up front, my left leg's up front, so I'm going to turn to my left first. And then the next time I go there, I'm just going to pause with that twist, get a little tall. And I want to find the spot where my sit bones don't feel like I'm trying to pry one of them off the floor. So I've got just the right amount of twist in my back. And then I'm gonna play with the shoulder. So my right shoulder is the one that's closer to the front of my mat, and my left shoulder is towards the back of this twist, okay? So I'm gonna hold on with my right hand, and I'm gonna kind of plant my left hand nice and firm so that I have a little bit of something to work with. I'm gonna draw my right shoulder blade forward and up, and my left shoulder blade inward and down, okay? So I'm gonna try to do that without trying to twist myself any deeper. Just move the shoulder blades, then let it go. So right shoulder blade forward and up, left shoulder blade downward and in, and then let it go. And then try again, and let it go. And try again, and let it go. And try again one more time. And we're gonna let it go. And then I'm gonna come around, and because I've spent some time there, I need to take just a moment, let my spine kind of go back into place. I'm gonna unwind my legs for a moment because I'm gonna cross them the other way. Okay, so there's a moment where I feel this kind of relaxation that moves down my spinal column, and I don't feel like I'm twisting that way anymore. And that's when I know it's time to go to the next side. So I'm gonna put my right leg in front, do a little bit of this little windshield wipers, this little washing machine move. They both start with W. So my brain apparently decided to transpose those words. So we're just gonna go one more time over to the side, okay? And again, I'm gonna hold on somewhere. I mean, it can be anywhere, just I'm gonna hold on as best I can. And then I'm gonna take my left shoulder blade upward and out, right shoulder blade downward and in. So I can move my head around a little bit, try to find a spot where less interference occurs. So left shoulder blade up and out, right shoulder blade down and in. And then let it go. And then try again. It's not easy to get that right shoulder blade to move. That's my shoulder blade where I have more scar tissue. So again, like I'm noticing that rather than judging it, saying, oh, it's my bad shoulder. I'm trying to say, thank you for giving me that little extra bit of attention, little extra bit of knowledge about what is going on there. So I can treat it with kindness, a little bit more compassion, and maybe be content with the fact that there's a little bit of scar tissue under that shoulder blade. Okay, one more time. So shoulder blade in, left shoulder blade out. Release it. Come out of the twist. Whew. Give yourself just a little bit of rock and roll, a little bit of movement, whatever seems appropriate. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna go for a wide V. Now when I do a wide V with my legs, I like to use my blanket under my knees because I tend to hyperextend. But you may want to keep your blanket under your seat. So I've got my legs out wide. I'm gonna take a little blanket and roll it up so that I've got a little bit of a bend in each knee. And some of us, there's about, it's a pretty good percentage of the population. I'm gonna suggest about 40%, but that may or may not be exactly accurate, but pretty significant. Like, I've taught a lot of yoga classes, a lot of individual people, and what I see is it's almost half and half. Not quite, but almost. The number of people who, when the legs go wide, their pelvis goes backwards versus the number of people who can bring their pelvis forward. It's genetic, it's just the shape of your bones. So if you're a backward person, your hips go back, you can either try bending the knees, and that does sometimes work. It helps bring the pelvis forward, or again, elevate the hips up. And sometimes just shifting the position will be enough. And then the other option would be to just bring the legs a little closer together. It's possible that it's just the distance that's causing trouble. Okay, so I'm going to start with shifting my pelvis, if I can, forward. If you can't shift your pelvis forward, you're just going to start with sitting up really tall. So I'm going to try to keep my breastbone lifted, try to keep my back relatively neutral. As I hinge forward, I can feel the muscles that go up and down my spine, especially in my lower back, stabilizing me, right? So they're kicking on to help hold me. It's part of the core. My transverse abdominis muscles, now that I've hinged myself forward, they're connecting in order to hold my body stable and try to hold my spine and my pelvis together in a nice way. So I want that moment, like right at the point where I feel that. It's where I'm kind of challenging these muscles in my back. Not to a place where I'm starting to feel any tension or problems in the hamstrings, but just that kind of, I feel my core muscles doing a little bit of work, okay? So then we're gonna come back out of there. Give it a little rinse. And now we're gonna pick a leg. So I'm gonna go left first since I twisted to the left first last time. And then I'm gonna bend my right knee. So I'm just kind of shifting the sit bones around. And you can bend your right knee and bring it all the way in against the groin. I just leave mine out there. Okay, so then I'm gonna fold over this left leg. You can grab hold of the leg with your hands. You can lasso it with your strap. I'm just gonna put my hands out here. And lift up through the breastbone, and then I'm gonna let myself gently cascade forward. No stress, no tension, nothing, just allowing a forward movement. Now that may not be right for you, so if you feel any pain in your low back, don't do that part. Inhale, come back up. So lengthening up, that might be the spot where you stay. For me, it feels okay to go ahead and just let everything get a little softer, being not too pushy. Lifting up, and again, it's about approaching each little shape, each pose with a little bit of compassion. Noticing where I feel the stretch, back of the leg, lower back. I'm gonna do that one more time. Kind of lengthen, lift, take a big breath, and then exhale, and let myself fold over. Inhale, come back to the middle. I'm still gonna leave this leg bent. I'm just gonna readjust the pelvis so it's a little more stable in the center. And then I'm not going anywhere just yet because I want to feel what just happened. So I still feel like I'm twisting a little bit to the left, and one side of my back feels a little different than the other. There's a slight difference in the tissue, and probably the latissimus dorsi muscle, because it goes from my waist up to under the shoulder blade, which is about the pathway of that muscle. So you just notice what's true for you. Maybe you know the name of the muscle, maybe you don't. Who cares? Like that's not as important. My brain likes to label things, so I'm just noticing that inclination. So I'm coming forward. And again, this may be that there's no forward momentum, and so you sit up tall. There might be forward momentum. It might make your back round more, so be kind. So wherever forward momentum is available to you, you can allow yourself to take up. And then if your elbows come all the way to the ground, cool. You can build up some props to put your elbows on, or you can just hang out like I've got going on my fingertips. So now this shape is a little different. So I feel a little bit more evenness across my back, but of course my hips are different. So I'm noticing the distinction between the two. I'm just using these poses to get kind of a little bit tuned in, and also to get online with my body. Okay, coming out of that shape, just noticing how that feels. Are there spots that feel a little tender, or everything feels light? Does anything feel heavy? Is there warmth or coolness? Whatever you got is what's it. Like whatever's there is there, right? There's no you should feel. It's like you might feel. Okay, so now I'm going this way, so I'm just gonna adjust the sit bones again. So I've got like a little bit more of a kind of turn this way with my pelvis. And I'm going over this bent leg. And now this makes this sit bone come up off the floor. So I'm just letting that ride. And then I'm gonna come up enough that I can plant that sit bone and turn this leg on. Bend the knee, flare out the toes. And then I'm gonna let it ride. Get a little softer. And then I'm gonna go back and flare out the toes. I'm gonna come around a little more to the front and let everything ride on that back end. And then come on back. Out of there, lean back for a moment, undo the legs for a second. I'm going to leave them both straight but closer together. You could also bend both of yours, and then I'm just going to hang out with the sensation. So this one always makes me feel like a little bit rounder in the upper back. It's very interesting. Sometimes more so than others, but that is pretty round on that left side. Okay, so same idea, other leg. So I'm gonna do this leg first. So I'm gonna kind of turn myself. I was already almost there anyway. So now I'm folding over this leg. I'm keeping my spine nice and tall for a moment. And then if it feels okay, you can round over, but I'm gonna stay tall for this one. And just see what happens as I kind of hang out with it and breathe. You can let yourself be in whatever version of this is right for you. gonna take one more breath. And I'm coming out of there. And I'm just gonna pause for a moment. Again, kind of noticing. I'm gonna move my sit bones back to the center. And there's gonna be a point where I'm not gonna feel like I'm turning, so then I'll know it's time to go forward. So then folding straight down the middle, I'm gonna let my back round, because it feels okay to me. And then I'm gonna extend out, kind of lengthen. Just feel. Let it round. Extend out, lengthen. Let it round. And I can feel the, as soon as I get longer here, I can feel the kind of my little core muscles kicking on to hold me there, which is really cool. Coming down, longer. And then coming all the way up. Just notice where that landed you. Pleasant little head, little kind of like, just a little pleasant, inside my brain. I don't know what to call that. It was good though. All right, so now I'm pointing over the bent knee, and I'm gonna let myself fold over all the way. Just let it get where it is. The sit bones off the ground, and then I'm gonna come back enough to get the sit bone planted and flare out those toes, even bend that knee a little. And let that go soft and lean over this leg all the way, and then that sit bone, bend the knee, flare out the legs. So I'm just changing things up. There's no right or wrong way to do a yoga pose. I guess it's wrong if it hurts you, but otherwise, there's really just choices, and then notice what the consequences are. Like, this is very interesting. When I flare the toes out, I'm trying to engage the inner thigh and the hamstrings, the quadriceps, to kind of dig my heel in. I can really feel my quads. It's kind of fun. All right, last one. Come all the way up. Again, we're just gonna let it go and notice what happened. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside for now because we'll use this later. But I'm gonna come up to all fours. I'm going to transform this all fours into down dog momentarily, but for right this second, it's going to start as all fours. And I invite you to follow me when you're ready. So now I've played with my spine a little bit seated. I'm just going to notice briefly how that is going. And then I'm going to tuck my toes under and start in that downward dog. Now I like to play with my shoulders a little bit with down dog, kind of move them up and down my back. Try to find a spot that feels like they just marry right into your upper back. And then you can kind of play with your legs a little bit more. Shake any tension out of your head, if you're okay with upside down. I'm going to go wide in the legs and walk my hands back until I'm all the way on the legs. Bend the knees until it's almost a squat. Come up halfway, straighten out the legs. And then bend the knees, let yourself cascade over. We're going to take it over to one side, and then straighten out whatever that leg is, and then shift it and do the other one. So I've got the right leg straight, and then the left leg straight. And maybe the right leg doesn't go all the way straight because you and your hamstrings haven't agreed to that yet. That's okay. Leave it a little bent. Come back to the middle, both knees bent. Come up halfway, straighten out the legs. Exhale, fold. We're going to go over to the opposite side. So we're going to straighten out that leg, and then the other one. And straighten out that one. And then the other one. There's definitely one that's easier than the other to get a little straighter. Okay, last time, straighten out this leg. And then we're going to bend both knees, come on back to the center, come up halfway, straighten out the legs, come all the way to standing, and take a moment right there. Give yourself a big stretch. Okay. Now we're going to start at the top of the mat. Just taking this little mountain pose. Of course, before I do that, let me get my mat wet enough that I will not slip on it. You guys have these issues with your mat, but you do. Go ahead. Get your mat sticky. And then find your mountain pose. Let the shoulders relax. See if we can come back to that sort of sense of gratitude. We're here, we're standing up. I'm going to shift the weight into the right leg. I'm going to pick up the left leg. I'm going to bring it into a tree pose. But you could do any balancing pose that you think would be nice. Step this tree into a warrior one. So when you feel like you're ready, you can step your foot back. Now, depending on how much your ankle rotates, you might have a little bit more forward position with the hip. It might be a little bit more to the side. Wherever it lands is fine. Just aim yourself in that direction. And then come up. Draw your elbows back. And then push forward. Do that a couple times. Now, you have a choice. You can take the arms behind you, lace the fingers together. You could use a strap to do that. I'm going to do a different hand position. So I'm going to do essentially a downward dog hand position. So we're going to fold into a humble warrior, leaving this knee bent. And then I'm going to take both my hands and just reach way out in front of me. I'm going to use blocks because it helps. And then let my torso just hang in that space. Find a stable place for the blocks. So because there's not any weight in my shoulders, I can do a little hyperextension here. If I had weight in those shoulders, that would be trickier. One more breath. Now, we're going to go for a straighter front leg, and I'm going to turn my back foot all the way forward if I can. This makes it a little harder for me to get my heel to the ground. I'm just going to work with the angles. Do my best. If the front big toe wants to come up off the ground, that's because your outer hamstring is pulling. You can try rotating the foot a little bit in or a little bit out so that you've got a little change in angle, and that might cause a little less pull on your hamstring, so just check that out. So I'm going to lift my chest out and then see kind of how far in. That's about as far in as it wants to go. So pausing right there. Noticing if there's too much tension in your hamstrings, but bending the knee a little bit or lifting up a little higher through your torso. Gonna do 2 more breaths. Now I'm gonna keep using these blocks, but you could also just use the floor. We're gonna pick the left leg up and take this into a standing splits. Now, the theory is that I can take my hands off and just hold on to my standing leg and use the back leg to keep myself lifted. But sometimes you fall, so don't be afraid to catch. Take one more breath. All right, so we're gonna take this left leg and bring it in. Now you can step back into down dog if you want to, do a little vinyasa, or you can step right up to the top, come up halfway, exhale, fold. Come to mountain pose. Now, if you're doing the vinyasa, just finish it. Go to plank, lower down, do an up dog, or your cobra. Come to down dog. Take a little journey up to the top of your mat. And when you get there, do finish a little up halfway, fold forward all the way to standing. And then you'll just meet the rest of us right here in mountain pose, right? That's the dealio. So this is the way you can kind of flex the practice to be your own, even though you're theoretically on my ride tonight. I'll give you a little permission for side journeys. All right, when you're ready, taking the weight to the left leg, we're going to bring ourselves into a tree. behind in your balance, or maybe there's not a lot of balance, that's okay too. Maybe you're in a different pose, that's okay too. And then we're gonna step back into warrior one, and kind of feel your way into that so that it feels good. Let your hip go with your leg. Bring your arms up, pull them back, push them forward, up, back, forward. Now, if you laced your fingers together behind your back last time, most of us have a habitual way of doing that. When I lace mine together, my right finger is always on top, right index finger. So if you switch it so that the other index finger is on top, it feels weird. So do that. And then I'm going to do the same thing because I was doing an even pose, not like something that's kind of one-sided. But you can use, if you're using the strap, just do that again. So we're going to fold forward into this bowing warrior. Keeping the front knee bent for this one. Reach up just a little bit more. There we go. Last breath. And then we're going to bring it all the way around, turn it all forward. Again, maybe the heel goes all the way around, maybe not. Maybe this front leg is a little unstable. Adjust it until it's stable. And then fold over the leg to the degree that seems appropriate given the circumstances. Big breath. And we'll walk the hands out and come up and into the standing splits. And again, maybe you don't even need to hold on. You can just use that top leg to kind of help power that pose up into the air. But when you fall, catch. One more big breath. Beautiful. So then again, you might come to mountain pose. You might do the little vinyasa. My friends. So finding your way when you get there into that mountain pose one more time. And again, right now this is kind of almost as important as Shavasana to me because it's an opportunity to come back and feel again, feel again, feel again, and notice any impact that the practice is having. Like, are my hips getting tired? Do I feel my core a little bit more? What about my shoulders? It's kind of fun. Okay. So we're going to take ourselves into warrior three pose. Now you can do that with the balance, or if you want, and you might have a table nearby, like I've got this table. I'm going to use blocks, but you could also use a wall. So we're going to take the left leg up, and I'm aiming to keep my hips level, right? So my body wants to stack my left hip up, so I'm going to try to keep it level, which is why I'm cheating a little and putting my hands down so that I can maintain that position with the hip, because I'm really after these outer hip muscles. So reaching back through that left leg and then holding it steady. This has been my jam this week. Now I'm going to hook this leg up and over and step into warrior two. So it's going to change the hip position. Trying to figure out where the right spot is. Come on back to reverse. And take a side angle and Enjoy it. Reverse. And a side angle. Oh. And a reverse. And a triangle. Oh. Now, I'm going to do a bound arm tonight. Sometimes I like to stretch the arm up. Sometimes I look up. Tonight I'm going to look down. Be grateful for the earth I'm standing on. So hold and steady. From my triangle, I'm going to meander this thing around into a wide angle forward bend. Sometimes it feels better to have the toes pointing out. Sometimes in feels better. You're going to have to do a little experiment. And I'm going to use the blocks because I'm going to put my elbows on them. But that might be too low, so you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I'll wiggle it out a little wider. Let my weight shift into my elbows and then back into my legs. Just to kind of feel that upper body kick on. Almost like I'm going to go into some sort of a headstand. I'm not. But just that sense of feeling the shoulders take the weight. As the weight gets a little more forward. As it goes backward and comes off. I'm going to do that one more time. So, shifting forward. And shifting backward. You have to ask yourself, do I want a vinyasa? Or am I going to step back up to the top of this mat with Candy and go to mountain pose? That is up to you, yogis. It's your practice. I'm forgetting I have leafy friends nearby. I got to keep my arms to myself. Now I love the spot where I've done one side but I haven't done the other yet. And even though I did some poses that are even, there's a very different sensation in my shoulders now, a different sensation on the right hip versus the left. So take one more breath there, or if you haven't quite gotten there, just kind of finish up. And then we're going to take that warrior 3 position with the legs. Again, trying to keep the hips nice and level. Reaching back through the right leg, trying to keep that left outer hip really active. Weight in that leg. You want it to be really exciting. Ready? So I'm going to lift this hip up so it comes a little bit more open and then find my way into my warrior 2. So when you're there and you feel the hips are aligned appropriately and you can hold your legs nice and steady and they don't wobble around, then go for this back and forth deliciousness. One more, and then we're going to turn it into a triangle pose. Again, I'm going to do a little bind with my arms. go with one arm. And then find, what does triangle feel like today? Because it might need a slightly different parameters on a given day than another. Breath. I'm going to release the arms, come around, do your wide angle shape. I'm going to put my forehead on the blocks, or my top of my head, and then hold on to my ankles. Keeping the weight in my legs so I can just have the tiniest bit of pressure on the top of my head. Now, your head may not get anywhere near the floor. That's okay. You can build up a stack of props to your head, or just forego that part. I just realized that. I might be asking a lot of you guys. Alrighty. So I'm going to wander back around and step into my mountain pose. And if you want to throw in one more vinyasa, go for it. Just want to come back one more time to that touchstone and feel where it landed me. All of that practice that I just did, how has it landed in my body? And can I just come back to that sense of being grateful that I have a body, that it's alive and functioning fairly well considering. There's a breath coming again. And then again. Now I'm going to come into a squat. A fairly wide with my feet, but low with my hips kind of squat. So if squatting works for you, awesome. You can make like a little place to sit down and sit down instead of squatting. Sometimes that's the better way to go about this. So you're in the squat shape without the pressure. Now some people get their hips so close to the ground that it's really easy to sit down. I am not one of them, but if you are, you can just sit down when you're ready. If you're like me, you have to change that up. And I'm going to go back to my friend downward dog briefly. And then sit. Sit down. Okay, so we're back where we started. Just for a moment, noticing, did it land us in a new place? All that stuff we just did. Maybe not. Maybe not so new. So I'm going to do some work on the back, starting with a supporting bridge pose, or supported bridge pose. So the way that you can use a yoga block to do that is you can put a block right under the pelvis. Now, for me, it's usually best to have both wings of the pelvis and the sacrum on the block, right? So it goes sideways with the hip like that. But some people like to put it this way so the sacrum is on and then the hips kind of hang off to the side. And depending on the shape of your pelvis and that sort of thing, that might feel more comfortable. Blocks are quite firm. And if you don't have a yoga block, you can use a pillow or a folded blanket in the same way. I'm going to use a blanket, fold it up, so I'll show you that in just a moment. But if you are using blocks, just make sure that it's under the pelvis and not under your lower back, because these little firm edges can poke you right between the vertebrae. It's not that exciting. What I am going to do with my blocks is set them out here so that I have the option of using them for like a little bit of a footrest, okay? So I'm going to put them out like that. And then I'm going to take the blanket that I had folded already into, basically just fold it in half, again, and I'm going to fold it into thirds. So I have almost a block size, it's a little bigger than a block, but almost a block sized square of blanket, and that gives me a nice firm base. So with the blanket, I can kind of sit on it and roll over it a little bit, because I'll get it, or well, just roll onto it, because I'll get it in the right spot. So I'm going to back it up just a notch. I'm going to sit right on the edge of it. And then as I roll backward, I should be able to get it right under my sacrum. Yeah, okay. Okay. So, all systems go. So I'm going to tuck my shoulders in, because I want this sense of broadening through the chest. I'm going to do this little robot arm thing, because I have a carrying angle in my arm. And if I put my arms down on the floor, they tend to pull out from under me rather than snuggle in. But if I do this, then they'll stay snuggled in. I'm realizing I need to go backwards just a little bit. Okay. You'll feel where the pressure lands and then make decisions. Now, I may have gotten those too far away, so I'll bring that in. I can straighten out the legs and let them hang out on this block. Yep. Okay. So I like the block to be on my calf muscle and not on my shin, so that, or not on my ankle, so that my heel kind of hangs off the edge of the block. And that is one option. Do I like that option? Actually, I think I'm going to go for cactus. Now that I've snuggled that in, it feels okay to drop it open that way. I'm just going to stay with this shape for a bit. Again, you might want to leave your feet on the floor. This might be too intense. Just make sure your low back doesn't cry stories to you. If it does, then change it so that there's not any more crying. You and your low back have to live together. Switch this up just a little bit. I'm going to take one leg off of the block so that I'm in a deeper hip flexor stretch here, and then I'm going to take this leg and bring it in and hold on to it like a happy baby pose. Now, if this is too much, you can hold on down here, because that feels really nice too. Actually, feels really nice. So I'll do that for a little while and then go back to happy baby. So I've got a much deeper hip flexor stretch happening right here. I'm just going to try to be kind, not too aggressive. Feels better, put it back up on the block, do that. Or whatever you've got in place of a block. Pillows would work there. So as things kind of open up, I can choose slightly different shapes. Kind of feel how it sinks us a little bit in. And stay for around 5 more breaths. This is a way to kind of get a pigeon pose-like stretch without the possible knee or other implications for pigeon. Now, if you're a big pigeon pose fan, you can, of course, do it that way. I'm going to let this leg go and slowly lower it to the ground. Bring the other one in. And just for a moment, I'm going to pause with both feet like that. So noticing the hips, noticing any feedback that I'm getting from the groin area or the outer hip or the hip socket to tell me whether I was too abusive or not, right? Because I'll get feedback that feels painful or sore if I was kind of messing up a little bit there. Do the other side. So I'm going to stretch my left leg all the way out. Feel where that lands me. And then I'm going to start with just grabbing the knee because that felt good last time. So start there. And then you can start right at the happy baby kind of shape, or you can do a different, slightly different version of that shape. You're on the journey with me here. Shape I'm going to do is this kind of, it's almost like pigeon pose upside down. Pigeon pose. If a pigeon were laying in a poolside cabana chair, waiting for the drink to come from the poolside cabana boy and or girl, whoever is working the poolside. In a cup, like in some kind of a fruity thing, like a coconut or a pineapple with an umbrella. This is where my brain just went, y'all. Coming on back to reality now. Although recently I was told that with this, all these plants in the background, when I did a Zoom call, that I sort of looked like I was in tropical paradise. That felt kind of nice. All right, so 2 more breaths here in your imaginary tropical paradise. And then we're gonna let go, and I'm really slowly, I'm going to bring this leg down to the ground and bring the other one in. Come back to this snuggled in shoulder for a moment because I got to get off of this blanket. So this is this is the end of my bridge pose. But before I end it, I just want to feel the sensations feel. And there's a really interesting sort of effervescent lightness to the top of my thigh and the front of my hip. It feels really nice. So hopefully that means good things for me. I'm going to lift my hips up and slide the blanket out, and then put the hips back down. And if you were using a block, this is especially helpful. Kind of rock a little circle right where that object was. The firmer the object, the more this circle feels really good. And then your back muscles might need to sort of have a few moments to adjust to a new shape. We were there for a while. All right, we're gonna do a little twist. So I'm gonna take my legs over to the right to start with, and I'm gonna take the blanket and use it as a kind of place to land my legs. So I'm gonna put the blanket over on the side first. And then I have a little bit of height there that when I lay the legs over to the right, I'm gonna, I'm gonna play with the positioning so that it feels like they sort of have a landing pad. Might need to fold it here or there. Yeah, okay. A little bit more room. Okay. So that then I can use that kind of little landing pad to create enough space to try to kind of hook my heel in around my leg. So I've wrapped it over the top. I'm trying to kind of hook my heel into the little corner there by my knee. Some people can take the foot and kind of curl it around the calf muscle. I can't, but you might be able to. And then this arm out here that's on the opposite side of where the legs are going, my left arm, I'm trying to find the spot that's like Like if Goldilocks sat down, and was like, which arm stretches better? Too much, too little, just right would be just right. We're going for the baby bear version. Baby bear is always the just right one. Just hanging for a little while. So I've got a little stretch on my outer hip, a little stretch through my pec. There's definitely a twist. And coming back around, because we did a twist near the beginning of this whole situation. Right, so I'm going to bring this top leg and just glide back out of there. Whew. Push those out of the way. Now without going anywhere right away, just kind of stretch out. I can feel a difference. Like my left side feels longer and a little softer, which I think is really nice. It's very pleasant. Look and see if it's true for you. This side now. Now for me, the second side gets me back into my shoulder that's a little bit tighter. So I saved the best for last. But you might find that one side's a little easier, one side's a little bit more tricky as well. So just take your time and get into the pose and use props if you like to make the pose a little bit more appropriate, approachable, kinder. So, yeah. That got a tiny bit more height. Quite that much. Alright, so don't be afraid to fool around with your props. Like, get them into the right spots. And let yourself get kind of heavy and soft and breathe. Touching back down into that notion of, oh yeah, let me find a sense of gratitude. Whatever word you want to use, but just, for me, I can't, I have to get the thesaurus and try to figure out what are the other synonyms for gratitude, because that's the only word that comes up. Which is just like, it's almost a reverence, right? It's just a sense of like, oh, it's a little bit amazing that I don't really even have to plan for it. Like the breath just keeps coming. And I wake up and, oh, I'm alive, I'm still here, right? Every day. We get to try again. We get to make mistakes and learn and do things that make us feel proud of ourselves and other people. And just, the whole kind of gamut of life's experiences, we get to do that again. There is a sense of awe to that. And so can we remind ourselves that the stuff that we sometimes take for granted is so precious and so powerful. This next breath and this moment that we're here noticing our shoulder and our hip in a yoga pose. come back nice and easy, like, just take your time. And then stretch out and see where it landed you. Now, we're going to do a little Shavasana. And Shavasana is just, it literally translates corpse pose. And so the object of the game with Shavasana is that we're that relaxed. It's like all the way to the point where we start to kind of turn into jello. We're that relaxed. But sometimes it's hard to get that relaxed. So you can, especially if you've got, like, if your pelvis doesn't sit just right, you can put pressure on your low back. So if you've got a pillow or you've got a rolled up blanket, you can put that under your legs. And for me, higher up is better, but for other people, closer to the knee might be better. So I kind of hug it in against the top of the thigh, and then see, and I can jiggle around to find the just right spot. And then snuggling the shoulder blades in to the degree that they kind of fit somewhere on my back. I'm not trying to squeeze them together, I just want them to be kind of find it a nice home. And then let the arms go as far apart as they need to go to relax the top of the shoulder. And then relax your eyes and your mouth again. And if you like, you can come back to the sense of awe, of reverence for this moment that you're in right now. And a sense of kind of curiosity about what's going to happen next. Or you can let all that go for now and just float here. We'll come back to that again at the end. breath all the way down to your tiptoes. Let go with a big sigh. Your fingers and toes a little wiggle. Stretch out your fingers and toes and wiggle them again. Just some wristed ankles. Give yourself a stretch. Now we're going to take our time, but we're going to wind up in a seated position. So nobody's rushing you, but eventually that's where we're going to wind up. You just want to sit where you're comfortable. We're going to end our practice tonight with a breathing practice. Now, the first thing you need to do is make sure you can breathe out of both your nostrils. So if one of your nostrils is totally blocked, don't block the other one off all the way. You're going to need to breathe. So you can just set your finger against this nostril and feel the sensation of the finger and the breath at the same time. And that will have a similar effect. It's not quite as dramatic, but you'll get it. So you're going to take your peace sign fingers, and you're going to put them on either your forehead, or you can curl them in and push them into your thumb mount. And then your ring finger and your thumb are going to operate your nostrils. So we're going to start on the left side with an inhale, and then we'll switch and exhale to the right. We'll inhale on the right, switch, exhale left. Inhale, switch, exhale. Inhale, switch, exhale. Inhale, switch, exhale. See the pattern? So we're going to switch every time it's time to exhale. So start by just taking a nice deep breath and let that air go. The next time it's time to inhale, if you can, inhale through your left nostril. And then switch over and exhale through your right. Now don't be too forceful. Inhale. When it's time, switch and exhale. Now if you get out of breath, do little shorter bit breaths. Or just stop for a second, okay? Just every time it's time to exhale, switch. Try to be really gentle with it. Not having any trouble, keep going. We're going to do it for another minute. So you're going to do one more round. And when you finish exhaling through your left nostril, stop doing it. for a moment be where the breath practice brought you. So this is called Nadi Shodhana. Essentially it sort of means like energy channel evening. And the thought is that it sort of helps create balance. If we're feeling a little stressed, it'll help bring us down a little bit. If we're feeling a little depressed, it'll help bring us up a little bit. And not necessarily in a clinical sense, but in just a kind of general sort of when life has this kind of going up and down on waves, that it'll sort of even things out a little bit. And I don't know if that's true for you or not, but you can certainly experiment with this practice. It's relatively safe breath practice. Just make sure you can breathe and don't be too forceful. And see if you like it. At the very least, it can be a great alternative to the meditation like we did at the beginning, where it gives you something to do. So you bring your awareness into the present moment. So thanks for joining me tonight for a little practice. We're going to take a nice big breath and a big sigh. Namaste, yogis. Thanks for coming with me on the little journey.